Please have a seat. Hi, friends. Hi, Henry. Happy New Year, everybody. Good to see you all. I have a question, and I want the kids and teenagers, if they would like to answer it first. What do you think God looks like? What do you think God looks like? Any takers? Oh, thank you. That's sweet.
Fran Choi.
Fran Choi. Oh, that's nice, too. Any youth or kids want to take a stab at it? Or when you were a little kid, what did you think God looked like? If that's easier for you. If you're older, there you go. I gotcha. A large white man with a giant beard. Louisa, what do you think God looks like? Like a wizard or something. Ooh, I like that with the tall pointy hat. Sure. Anybody else? I saw Bennett. I don't know if he'd be interested in saying anything, but probably not. I don't want to leave him out, just in case. And Ainsley said no thank you. I saw that clearly. For any adults in the room, what do you think God looks like?
Old man on a throne.
Old man on the throne. There you go. Anyone else? Air. There you go. Air.
An amorphous blob.
An amorphous blob. I like that.
A big head coming up out of a cloud.
A big head coming out of a cloud, which is kind of terrifying when you think about it. Which, you know,
But according to
God can, yeah, there's images of God where God's really terrifying. Yeah.
Combination of music and laughter.
A combination of music and laughter. I like that a lot. A river of energy? Wind. Burning bush. So all of those things can be different images of God that we might have. And the image of God that you have now might be different than when you were a child, right? So I want to tell you what my image of God was when I was a child, which goes along with what a lot of you said. When I was young, I thought that God probably looked like my dad. And the reason was that my dad had a beard, and as he got older, it got white. And, you know, he just kind of had a cross between looking like God and Santa Claus. It was kind of hard to decide which he might be. Aside from the way God looked, when I thought about God, I thought he was a combination of people that I was familiar with. I thought he was like my dad, because my dad was a very kind person. I thought God was also like my grandfather, who was a very organized and very strict person. And I suspected that God might be like the President of the United States, because that's the person who makes all the rules that we have to follow. That is terrifying, but a young imagination, right? So my image of God was of an old white man who was kind, who was strict, and who made all the rules, right? That's what I thought God was. And I wasn't alone in thinking that way. As a kid, a lot of the people around me probably thought that way. Although, when I think about it, no one ever told me that that was what God was like. But I just kind of knew, because everybody just kind of knew. Now, when I grew up, I changed the way I thought about God. Has God, the image of God, the way you think of God, changed for you at all over your life? Raise a hand. It does for a lot of people, and that's a good thing. You know, we don't really have a handle on God. We don't really know what God is. And do you think God is big enough to change and grow as we change and grow? Probably. I think that's likely. When I grew up, I decided, no, there's no way that God could be an old white man sitting on a throne in the sky, his head popping out of the clouds. That just didn't work for me. But I didn't really have another idea. I knew that God wasn't a person. I believed that God was part of everything, which means that God can't be male or white. I knew that God was so much bigger than that, but I still was kind of fuzzy on what I imagined when I tried to visualize God. And one time when I was an adult, I was working as a Christian educator. I was just starting out. I was at a conference in a workshop, and I was asked to draw a picture of God. And you know what? I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. The only image I had was of that old white man. And even though I knew that wasn't right, I didn't have anything to replace it. And I didn't know, as a result, I didn't know what else to draw. Now, I don't really remember what I eventually ended up drawing, but what I do remember was how frustrated I was and how embarrassed I was. The image of God that we're given from a very, very young age stays with us, whether we want it to or not. And the reason for that is that words have power. The way we talk about anything gives it meaning. So if we talk all the time about God being our Father, what happens? God becomes our Father. And fathers are male, right? So if that's what we learn from a very young age in the world around us and in the way we worship, that's the first image we have. And even as we grow and change, that image stays with us. And I want to share something that is from a study that was done at Stanford University. And I apologize to my younger friends. I may lose you a little bit on this, but it's relevant because the church I served at before I came to St. John's was Lafayette Arenda Presbyterian Church. And Stanford wanted to do a study trying to see what the relationship might be between how people perceive God and how they perceive who deserves to be leaders and bosses and supervisors. And the kids at my church were part of that study. And this study was big. It was actually 7 different studies that were put together. And it was adults, and it was children, and it was white people, and black people, and other people of color. It was pretty extensive. Now here's the title of the study, and you won't be quizzed on this, but the title will tell you what they were getting at. The title of the study was God as a White Male, the Psychological Barrier of Conceptualizing White God as a Male, a Psychological Barrier to Conceptualizing Black People and Women as Leadership Worthy. So this is what they were trying to get at. You know, when we think of God, the way we think of God, who gets included in that and who gets left out? And what does that mean in terms of who we pick to be in charge? So a couple of things that the study found. Black and white Christians, both men and women, who think of God as white and or male, also believe that white men are the best leaders.
Wow.
Okay? Secondly, even adults that don't believe in God at all, that just, God isn't a thing for them, even for adults who don't believe in God, God's identity, God with a small g, and a God's identity shapes their belief about who's a better leader. So whoever you think is up there in the heavens kind of running things, whoever you conceive of that to be, that's who you want to be your leader with us. Number 3, young children believe that God is more white than black and male than female, and that white people have more boss-like qualities. So the idea of God as a white man is linked to the belief that white men are better leaders. So this isn't just about the churchy stuff and what we're learning in church. This is about how our belief systems influence who we think gets to be in charge. Is that a big deal?
Yes.
I think it is. It is a very, very big deal. So it's very important that we're careful with our words, that we're careful with the words that we use. If you're a younger person in this room, or if you remember when you were younger, did your parents ever tell you to be careful about what you said? Did they ever tell you to be careful with your words? My parents definitely did. I found it very irritating, but I kind of get it now. Words have power, and the way we talk about God has power as well. The way we think about God and talk about God affects the way we think about other people and talk about other people. It means that sometimes we may think some people are better than others, some people are more worthy than others, and is that okay?
No.
It's not. Nobody's better than anyone else. That's just not true. But if we think of God in a certain way, then we think that everyone's good and worthy should be that particular way too. And isn't it sad? Because isn't God kind of bigger than all of that? Right? Bigger than anything we can imagine. Certainly bigger than being a person or having certain traits that are like us. We're like God. God is not like us, right? We've got it backwards, it seems like. So today, and during this whole season of Epiphany, some of what we say in church will be talking about God as a woman. And that's really different. We don't do that in church. I mean, like ever. Like ever in my life. Have I ever heard that done? It is a very, very different thing to do. And here's some of the words that we use, that we've spoken already to describe God. It was in our psalm. And I just want you to listen to them again. We describe God in our psalm as she who is strength, she who is exalted, she who saves, she who is delight, she who provides, she who is majesty, she who is God. That is really different. That feels very different. For some of us, including me, it feels good. Because for once in my life, I get to hear God talked about in a way that represents me. And that means a lot to me. In fact, I didn't know how much it meant to me until I actually heard it. I didn't know how much I needed that, needed to hear God talked about in a way that looked and sounded like me. I didn't know how much I needed that until I heard it. It's also really, really weird. It's weird. You know, when we're talking, I have to be very careful about what I'm saying. I have to really pay attention because it's not the way I'm used to talking about God. Even though I know that God is neither a man nor a woman, there's something that opens me up, that opens up my idea of God when I hear about God spoken of in a different way. So for the younger folks in the room, do we think God is a woman? Could be. But not exclusively, right? Not only. It's and. It's not or. It's not a man or a woman. It's not black or white, right? It's and. So when we use different language, and when one of the reasons I think we're using this language that we're using from a women's lectionary for the whole church, using feminine language, is to help open us up. If it feels good to us, we can let it feel good. If it feels weird or uncomfortable, we can sit with that too. That is not a bad place to be. And there's still, I promise you, there's still a lot of God as Father talk in our liturgy, and will continue to be. We will not lose that, right? We will not lose that which we are familiar with. But this is a real opportunity for us to do something different and to have that experience together which is really important too. Because how we talk about God affects how we talk about other people. And when we are only looking at and paying attention to a certain segment of people, we're leaving so many other people out. And I don't think that's how God is. Do you think God leaves people out? I don't think so. If God created all that is, that means God created all the people. It means God loves all the people. It means some people are not better than other people. And it means that God is not an old white man sitting in a chair on a cloud. Right? When we use different language, it helps us open ourselves up not only to God, but to those around us. It helps us learn to look at people differently and to be willing to try to see God in each person, not just some people. And if the Stanford study is right at all, when we open ourselves up to different ways of thinking about God, it also might help us open us up to different ways to thinking about who is worthy of being leaders, of diversifying our leadership so not just a certain person is always the one who is chosen, where we have a variety of people that are chosen and that their skills and the things that they have to offer are honored as bosses, as leaders, as elected officials, to represent all of us. That's the bigger picture. It's not just about how we think of God in our churchy world. It's about how we live that out and how we act and make choices in the real world. So one of the things that I also want to share with you is that as I got older, like I said, my image of God changed. I decided God was not one thing, but God was just lots of things. And so if I was asked to draw a picture of God now, I could do that. I could do that. But I would never finish the picture. And here's why. I want to show you something. So now, when I think of God, I choose to think of God as like a mosaic. Does anyone know what a mosaic is?
Lots of little pieces.
Lots of little pieces that make a bigger picture, right? And so on this board are lots of little pieces that are making some kind of bigger picture. And on all the different pieces, they're different sizes, they're different shapes, they're different colors. They don't fit together perfectly, and they don't have to. Some of the pieces are kind of in the middle, some are going off in their own direction. This is how I choose for now, anyway, to think about God. As a mosaic made up of pieces, and you and I and everyone are those pieces. There is a piece of God in you, and there's a piece of you in God. And in order to have a fuller understanding of what the nature of God might possibly be, I think we need all the pieces. I don't think we can leave any pieces out. I think we have to ask ourselves which pieces are missing and go out and find them and include them. So I created this for myself, but I also created it for you. I'm going to put it in the back of the church. There's other pieces in a basket. And if you would like to, you can add onto this mosaic. You can take some pieces and just stick them on here. And then you too will have a piece that is part of this bigger picture of my image or my idea of what an image of God could be. The other thing I'd like you to do is once you leave here today, I want you to look for God in others, especially the others that are quieter, that aren't in leadership, that aren't in charge. Look for God in all people, not just the ones that make all the choices or all the decisions or have all the power. Because when we see God in all the people that we meet, that helps us come closer to God too. And in my own opinion, when we're closer to that kind of God, then we can make better choices about including more and more of a variety of people in the decisions that we make every day. When you think about it, that is one way that we can help the kingdom of God come closer and be present here